Greetings to all and welcome to the 300th episode of the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Today's guest is one that I've hoped to speak to since starting this podcast many years ago. That, of course, would be the one and only Mac McNeilly of the one and only Jesus Lizard. Mac and I get to talk about the Jesus Lizard's killer new album entitled Rack. We revisit some of the previous Jesus Lizard albums chronologically and talk about tours at the time, as well as his love for everything from Black Sabbath to Captain Beyond, and as well as, why David Yow is just really not a shy person. New record Rack, available everywhere on Ipecac Records September 13th. Today's episode is sponsored by OneUpLoops.com. Drummer Carson Gann and his team spent an incredible amount of time recording over 450,000 shaker, tambourine, and hi-hat loops at every possible tempo and multiple feels with incredible mics and outboard gear for you to pick and choose. It's organized for you to find exactly what you need with just a few clicks, and everything feels and sounds incredible. You can sign up for free to check it out and gain full access to all 450,000 loops starting at just $6 a month. No download limits, whatever you want, whenever you want. New loops, one-shots, and drum breaks are being added weekly. And it's definitely a great addition to the arsenal of any drummer and or producer, and I can vouch for that, having used it myself. Check it out at oneuploops.com. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found where all podcasts are found. If you like what you hear, please check out any of the previous nearly 300 episodes. And double high fives if you can give me a like, a subscription, and or a positive review. It would be appreciated. All right, psyched as hell on this one. The one, the only Mac McNeilly, Jesus Lizard. Racks, balls, and all. 300 of them. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Mac McNeilly of the Jesus Lizard. Oh my God, what's happening, man? How are you doing?
I'm good. What's happening with you?
Not much. I'm digging this new record from the Jesus Lizard, Rack. I mean, I think it sounds great, and congrats to you and the band for that matter in getting back in the saddle, boys. Holy shit.
Yeah, I know it's been a while, but it feels really good. Yeah, so I'm really proud of it, and we all are, and it's just seemed like the time was right. So I'm glad you like it. That's the most important thing. It's like if we like it, that's good, but it doesn't do us much good.
Which is funny because when I think about y'all's records, I was always kind of thinking this band sounds like a band that doesn't give a fuck what other people think, and they do what they do, and people just happen to like it.
Kind of funny you say it that way, because I guess in some ways that's true, because we're not trying to make a certain sound or, trying to be a certain way. I think whatever comes out is whatever happens when the four of us get together. And that's just kind of we're pretty lucky that naturally just kind of something comes out so we don't have to like push and squeeze and,
Yeah.
it naturally just kind of pops out.
Absolutely, man. The last time I saw the band live, I believe was in 2009 when Jesus Lizard came through New York. What do you recall about that show? And I guess did that run sort of solidify the band moving forward in a sense? Because you had just rejoined them, to my understanding, at that point.
Yeah, we that whole year was started off with a couple of shows, and then we added a few more, and a few more came along. And before long, it was sort of like coincided with Touch and Go re-releasing those records we did with them because they had been remastered with Steve Albini and Bob Weston. So that kind of just happened at the same time. It wasn't planned so much, and but that worked out really well, and it felt really good to all of us to play. But I think the one thing that was in the back of all of our minds was, it'd be great if we had some new material.
Right.
So it's always good playing the old stuff, but I'm really looking forward to playing some of this new stuff live. So
I hear you. What was the process of writing the record, and is everybody still in different states?
Yeah, everybody's spread out. We have David Yow's in LA, and David Sims is in New York. Dwayne's in Nashville, and I'm just outside of Chicago here. So yeah, pretty spread out. The process has been a lot of, especially with COVID, was a lot of file sending back and forth, and, listening to stuff, playing to it, giving each other ideas. We would occasionally convene in Nashville and do some rehearsing and try to see if we could get these songs kind of like into shape, and some of them came together really quick and other ones took a little bit more time. And we ended up, like as in most bands probably have a process that's similar where you think you're going down one road and then it just doesn't work, or you need to take out a part and swap it with something else.
Sure.
Then it becomes a new thing. And so it's just sort of an organic process, and we weren't under any pressure to do it at a certain time. We just all really wanted to do it,
Hmm.
and we had enough songs at that point, like right before the pandemic, that we were working on, that I think we all thought, yeah, we can make a record if we, really put our minds together and like, cut the weak stuff and try to keep the stronger stuff. So.
Hmm. What was your personal experience recording drums on it? Because the drums, I think, sound great.
No, thanks. Yeah, it was fun. It was really good because we rehearsed. We had rehearsed a few times. We recorded it in November of last year, and the last time we had rehearsed all together was July. And when we got together in November, we had 2 days that were set aside just for intense rehearsals, and we did like about 8 to 10 hour day, maybe, yeah, 10 hours at least, maybe 12 of each of those days. We're just running through the songs and making final tweaks, and I had been practicing on my own, so I felt like I was fine as far as physically playing the songs, and we knew the arrangements, so it was pretty easy. It was like just once we got all ready and settled down, we just kind of like took a take, and sometimes we did another one. And so most of them were kind of like the old days where we were pretty prepared going in,
Hmm.
and then we just ended up using the first or second takes. And we were just trying to get drum takes initially because we didn't know how it was going to work. We had a certain amount of time, a certain amount of days to do it,
Uh-huh.
but it ended up that we got those really quickly. And the guitar and bass parts, they were very happy with those that when we all played together. So we ended up keeping the vast majority of those. There was a few little, adjustments here and there, but it was pretty much us live in the studio, except for like a few guitar overdubs and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Wow, man. Who was the who mixed it? Because I think the record sounds like a modern recording without sounding overproduced, and yet still captures some of that raw energy of the band that, to my ear, was present on the Touch and Go era, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Mark Lonsway mixed it, and he's in Nashville, and he did a phenomenal job. We worked together with him to go over mix revisions, and we did that remotely, which was kind of a new experience for us. We had,
Hmm.
not all of us in the same room, each one wearing a cook's hat, going, "I think it needs more of this. I think it needs more of that." So
Yeah.
sometimes that can work against you too, and you just can't get enough of a perspective. So this was kind of a new, different way, but I think it worked really well. And Paul Allen was the guy who tracked it, and he had a big hand in how it sounded too, I think.
Nice.
So we both of those guys, Paul Allen and Mark Lonsway, really instrumental in helping us get what we wanted, which was a modern sound, like you mentioned.
Hmm.
But let's not make it too like slick, and
Right.
compressed and just clean. We just leave it as it sounded as much as you can. Of course, you're going for a certain thing, but yeah, the modern aspect was kind of important because we didn't want it to just sound like another one of the records from the 90s. Nothing wrong with that, but
Hmm.
a lot of time has gone by, so
Right.
production standards are different now.
Hmm. How's it been being on Mike Patton's label and Epicac Records? Because I think it's cool that I'm assuming that relationship probably maybe goes back to Dwayne and Mike Patton being in Tomahawk. Has it been cool being on that on his record label?
Yeah, it's been great. It does go back to Dwayne having connections there through Tomahawk, I'm sure,
Hmm.
and he was really happy with us choosing to do it with Ipecac. There were a few more things we were considering before we made up our minds, but in the end, it was kind of an obvious choice, and they wanted to do it. They were real excited about it, and it felt like we were going to get taken care of. And so far, it's been great. They've really worked very hard in setting this whole thing up so it could launch right. And they know what they're doing with social media, which I do not. So
Yeah.
it's really good. It's a new beast, and like
Yeah.
streaming and everything. It's like
Of
I did
course.
not grow up that way.
Right. Right. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm actually excited that y'all are coming through Atlanta. I live just about 40 minutes south. So when y'all come through, I'm going to be excited to see y'all again, of course, and hear these songs, but also hear these new songs, which I'm really interested in kind of hearing them melding with the older ones, because it sounds like, it's obviously the four guys, and y'all have an incredibly distinct alchemy between the four of you. So it's the Jesus Lizard. I love it.
Yeah, well, thanks. That's great to hear. I don't think we wanted to make something that sounded really strange or not like us, but whatever comes out when we're together kind of comes out. So we're pretty lucky in that way.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to like the earlier days, right around the time when you were joining them, had you had the chance to see Scratch Acid or Rape Man or any of those bands live?
No, I had never seen Scratch Acid or Rape Man. I had heard some Scratch Acid before, and met David Yow and David Sims when the band I was in from Atlanta '86 was going through Austin.
Yeah.
So that's how we kind of traded phone numbers, and eventually later David Yow called me, and I ended up going up to Chicago and trying out, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's wild, man. Yeah, I actually have the Jesus Lizard book. I got y'all to sign it. I was living in New York at the time, and y'all did it at a bookstore. So I got you and David Yow and David Sims to sign it. I have yet to get Dwayne. At some point, I got to get Dwayne to sign that damn thing.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll just have to tie him down, and threaten him.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to Damon Che of Don Caballero, and he mentioned not only Ray Washam and seeing Scratch Acid and everything, and how that was a big influence to him. But he also said, he mentioned Touch and Go drummers, and he actually mentioned you. He's saying that he loved those records, the Jesus Lizard records, and especially you're playing on those records, which is pretty awesome coming from that guy.
Yeah, that's really nice. Damon, and we had a fun time hanging out with him the few times we played with Don Caballero, and just hanging out with him. I remember one breakfast in particular where he took us to this spot, and there was quite a bit of drinking going on the night before, so we all just looked like ghosts, like coming into that place. And no one felt very good, but it was after a while we just kind of settled in. It was great times. He's an awesome guy.
Absolutely, man. 1990, Head is released. What do you recall about that time and working with Steve Albini on that first record?
Well, it was pretty easy. We would rehearse a lot, and for those songs, we had gone out on the road quite a bit, at least regionally. Forget what we did before that time period, but we were playing a lot, whether it was rehearsing or playing live, and we just kind of he just turned the tape on and we played, that was kind of it. And I remember just having a lot of fun doing it, and a lot of laughing and joking around. And it was no pressure situation. It was just kind of fun to do,
Yeah.
It's like ideal really, because you felt good and comfortable with the music, felt comfortable with the guys. And it was just like, let's just do this. And it was a lot of fun.
If that was 1990, that must have been at his home studio, right? Because electrical audio wasn't a thing.
Well, we recorded at Chicago Recording Company, CRC, which is in downtown Chicago, or was. I'm not sure if it's there anymore, but it was on Ohio Street. And he got a really special rate, I think, because we'd go in at night.
Okay.
And they did some jingles in there, and they did some other stuff. They weren't really like a rock band tracking studio like that, but they had a lot of nice gear. They had like a Neve board with the flying faders and everything, and really nice rooms. It was really, really fun to be in there. We felt like we were being bad, like sneaking in and we're not supposed to be here, but let's do this anyway.
Right. Absolutely. Anyone that's listened to this podcast, even a few episodes, at some point or another, I end up ranting about how much I loved being around for the year of 1991, when obviously Goat came out from the Jesus Lizard. And it's a year that I think about a lot. I love talking to anybody that put a record out in that year, because when looking back at it, the Melvins put out a record, the Metallica Black Album came out, Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger, Nirvana Nevermind, the Pearl Jam record, Smashing Pumpkins, more left field bands like Primus, Fishbone, Mr. Bungle. There was the My Bloody Valentine, like other kind of like Corrosion of Conformity's Blind record, the first Unsane record.
Right.
The other New York band Leeway put out a record that I love, Desperate Measures, and there was early hip hop that was coming out. And when you look at just the diversity and output of that year, it really blows my mind to this day how much incredible music and again how diverse it was. And I just love that year so much. But what do you recall, I guess, about GOAT? And when y'all recorded it, did y'all have a sense that grunge was already happening, or did y'all record it? Because I feel like grunge, you almost started to get a sense of it later in like 92, like the 92 lineup of Lollapalooza, for instance.
Yeah, I don't know that we were so aware of that name tag being like, affixed to a lot of music. But,
Yeah.
It was being tossed around. But we had played with Nirvana at Maxwell's in Hoboken, and
Wow.
that was a lot of fun. Obviously, before they blew up, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, and we were joking with those guys. And I don't think we were so aware of all the other stuff that was going on in that year because we were so busy ourselves. We were always playing out or rehearsing for, and when we did these records, like most of these records were done coming right off of like a tour or playing out live for a couple of weeks. So we were pretty sharp and pretty well honed as far as like these songs. So we would just go in and run through them like we would on stage, and that would be it, So I think we were just so into our own work ethic, whatever that was. We were rarely at home in those first couple of years. We were always gone. And that was good. It was good for the band because the more we played and got that stage experience, that's like nothing else like that. You can practice as much as you want, but until you start playing a lot of live shows, it's like just a different thing. It's like you need that aspect too, at least we did. We felt like we did. So it was really good time period. But like you say, you're right. A lot of crazy stuff came out right around that time. It was like this explosion.
Yeah.
And it's easier to see looking back for me. And like you just, listed those bands. You're right. But I think at the time we were aware of some of that stuff going on, obviously, but we were much more like, well, what do we need to do next? And kind of like blinders on,
Uh-huh. Were y'all pretty much just touring your asses off, coming home for a little while, just long enough to write up new songs, or were you writing them on the road and then hitting the studio and kind of recording it live, kind of like you mentioned?
Some stuff we'd work through at soundcheck, but I think most of the songs were written. The bulk of the songs were written in rehearsal at home. Like when we had some downtime, when we were not on the road, we would start working on songs, and we'd tape them on cassette and listen back to them. And for the first couple of years, we were all living in the same apartment. So it was just all four of us together there, together at rehearsal, together on the road. So we were like, it was a microcosm of just like us, So we got to know each other pretty well. And it was great, because we all get along, and we were lucky that way in that there's no major flaps or anything like that. It's kind of like a band of brothers. So, again, very lucky, very grateful for that.
Absolutely. And just in thinking about GOAT 1, I still love the recording of that and Liar both. I really love those recordings. And when they re-released the remastered vinyl versions, I got both of those. And I'd have to listen to the previous master and A-B them to know. I just know they sound great. I thought they sounded great originally as well.
Yeah. There wasn't much that changed, I don't think, with those. They weren't like drastically redone,
Right.
I think they may have just made a few little tweaks here and there, but they didn't really want to change the balance. I don't think anyone really wanted to make a big shift. We just want to like maybe lift it up a little bit sonically,
Right. And then the tracks on that, even if it's just the first couple between Then Comes Dudley followed by Mouth Breather, I mean, good God, those two back to back are such an incredible way to start off a record, man. Every time I hear it, I'm like, especially just opening with Then Comes Dudley, just bass drums. And then the first thing I'm like, wow, these drums sound great. But also like David Sims' bass tone is crushing. It sounds so good. Jesus.
Yeah. He's pretty talented in that way. It's funny because people have asked us in different interviews. It's like, well, what's it like to play with David Sims? Or he'll be asked, what's it like to play with me? Or how do you guys get, so tight and everything. It's like, well, we don't do anything. It's just like, I think we trust each other, and it's just kind of like we do our thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how it comes out that way, but that's how it comes out. So, but you're right about his tone. It's like, it's insane. It's like one of my favorite bass players ever just happens to be in the band I get to play in. So it's
unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
And then with Then Comes Dudley, that sort of slower pace. Was playing slow something that you struggled at all with at the time? Because that is some of these Jesus Lizard songs are slow, relatively slow, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think I felt like I struggled with it because I kind of grew up listening to a lot of old, like I guess you'd call it classic rock now, but like,
Sure.
Old Sabbath and Zeppelin and Deep Purple and stuff. And
absolutely.
some of those songs that they would play back then were like these slow blues numbers,
100%.
Doom, boom, bop, boom, boom, or boom, boom, bam, bam. So a lot of it comes from that.
Yeah.
And as long as you kind of find a groove to go in, you can kind of float around at any speed, really. I enjoy that too. I think there's a lot of power in that, like real simple, reduced beat where it's just there's energy you can get across without playing a lot of notes. And that's a cool thing too,
For sure.
as well as like playing fast or playing a fast fill, which I appreciate and I like too, but yeah, it's just a different thing. So like, it's kind of another flavor of a drum set that, in a band, if you're doing that, you can really lay into something like that. And, it's fun, especially when you can just kind of wash on that ride cymbal.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. So
yeah, man. I think this might be the song Southmouth that's on Goat. That if it's that one, it's got a shuffling kind of ride pattern that kind of washes out. That's reminiscent of Fairies Wear Boots. You just mentioned Black Sabbath, and it kind of reminded me of that.
Oh yeah, that's a great song too. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Bill Ward played some great stuff for sure. Yeah.
Man, I love, especially talk about a great tone of that 1970 debut self-titled record.
Oh yeah.
Like just the way there's something magical about that. And my God, I've talked about it plenty of times because Bill Ward comes up a lot, that when you watch video from that era, watching him with the bombast that he had and just how raw and killing they were. Oh man, they were so good.
Yeah, and he did not have a big kit at all either.
No.
He just like tore it up on like basically a 4-piece kit, or sometimes he had 2 floors.
Yep.
1 up, 2 down, and but he, and then later on he expanded, but like he didn't need a whole lot of stuff to do his thing.
No, he did not. No, he did not. Well, I'm going kind of chronologically with some of these records, but I was going to tell you the backstory on how I originally heard the Jesus Lizard. So at the time, I was reading, magazines, and there was like the pics of I don't remember if it was the artists or like the people that worked at the magazine, but the Jesus Lizard Liar came up a lot, and I was like, okay, I'll make note of it. I didn't quite even understand how people were describing it, which is understandable. So I went to this. There was a cassette, some CDs, vinyl place in New Orleans called Rock and Roll Collectibles, run by this guy who was like a lot of record store people, just completely miserable and like super eccentric. And I was him to the T. And I went in there and I was like, I'm going to just go looking through some stuff. I looked through, he had cardboard boxes of like used cassette tapes. I went there and I saw Liar and I was like, oh, this is the band that all these people have been raving about. And I got it and I put it in the cassette tape player and I was like, I hate this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not for everyone. And I kind of wonder who listens to that without hearing the band at all and goes, this is great. This is just it's not everybody's thing. And like, I can see where, like, sometimes I'll listen to something and it doesn't really hit me right away, but it's enough of it there to where I'll revisit it, a few times.
That was definitely the case with y'all. Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the 3rd time or the 4th time where it hits. And you're in the right frame of mind or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but
yep.
And so some stuff isn't immediate like that. Some stuff you have to hear it a few times and then go, oh yeah, now it makes sense. or something.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, what's ironic is when I finally decided that I liked it, I had gotten fired from working at a health food store. This kind of like pathophobic, neurotic, like woman that should have left her house in a hazmat suit probably said that I sneezed on my hand and made her a smoothie, so they fired me. And I was
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
fuck this. And I put Liar in, and I was like, all right, I get it now.
Yeah.
I had to get fired from my job to dig it.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's like, we didn't know that either, but now that you've shed light on it, that makes perfect sense. Go get fired and listen to this. You will like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then it was kind of the similar with Goat. I went back and I got Goat, and I was like, all right, this is cool. And then one day I was riding around in college I had a sunroof, and I was just stoned enough to where I was like, I'll check it out. I'd never really thought about getting stoned and listening to this, and I listened to it. I was like, this is fucking great. Immediately, I was like, saw it in a totally different light. I was like, I just have to alter my state of conscious to like really accept this. And ever since then, I've been a massive fan.
Okay. Well, as long as you got there, it's like, yeah, it's like interesting that it takes substances and like we're, getting fired and being angry, those conditions, maybe to like open you up, but
Yeah.
whatever it takes is great.
Yeah. And another amazing sequence of songs to open up on that record, man, between Boilermaker, Gladiator, Art of Self-Defense, and Seasick. Another one that is like slow. That's a slow groove, man.
Yeah, it is. It's and we probably play, or I probably play that a little bit faster live. It's because when I go back and listen to that occasionally, I'll go, yeah, that was kind of like really, relaxed and but it's fun to play it that way because you know what? There's in some of those songs like that one especially, there's so much space in there. Like especially with we've got 3 instruments going, and there's times in little microseconds there where there's really not a note being played or there's a hangover note or something like that. So a lot of that, I think, contributes in a good way. Like some of my favorite bands didn't have a whole dense wall of sound when they were playing. You know what I mean? Each person had their part, and sometimes they'd be playing at the same time, but other times it would be kind of interleaved, and one guy wouldn't be playing and another would. And so there's just a lot of power in that. And so that's one of those songs I think that where the space kind of contributes to this like bigger than just the parts,
Absolutely. On the beat for Gladiator, which I've heard a lot of people quote from your drum part in that subsequently. Do you recall the origin of that beat? Did that start with the riff, or did that start with your drum beat?
I can't really remember, but if I was to guess, I would say it was probably the riff. And I don't know if they wrote that riff or brought the riff to the rehearsal for the first time thinking that it was going to be that way. But when I heard it, it just seemed like that was something that needed like the snare on the one, bam, 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 sort of like a double time thing, but not really, just like, So it's kind of like mirroring the, the bass and the guitar. It's like just this locked in thing, and it's very repetitive, but it's very powerful. Again, because of that, you just kind of keep knocking it, and then it does have these parts where it'll go off, so you can come back to that, and it just picks up steam every time you get to come back to it.
Yeah,
and as the song kind of goes towards the end, you've been sort of pummeled with that for quite a while, and then there's the release at the end, and then you finally come back to it one last time. So I didn't really think about it very much. It was much more of a, okay, this makes me want to play this, which is kind of how these songs really originated. I think we all kind of let each other do their thing. We take suggestions from each other a lot of times, but like usually we kind of just trust that each person's going to come up with their part that fits pretty well, And that was just one of those that's what I felt like doing. And once it happened a few times, it was kind of like the basis, and then we refined it depending on what parts we're doing,
Yeah. Was there that much touring after Liar? Because, like we were saying, between 91 and 92, you put out Head, Goat, and Liar, and then there's that break for Down. Was there a good bit of touring off of Liar that pushed Down back?
Yeah, I think so. I think we played, we were constantly very busy. Like I think in Jesus Lizard's book, there is like David Sims kept great notes about who we played with and what the shows, when we played the shows. So if you look in there, I'm sure around 92, 93, we were very busy during that time. We were like, sometimes we do our own shows. Sometimes we get invited to open for like Helmet. I think that was in 93.
I could see that.
And then back in 90s, Sonic Youth took us out for like a string of shows, which was really helpful. That kind of was a lot of exposure for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we, during that particular time, Steve Albini was our house engineer. So he was like front of house for us.
Oh, damn.
When we played with Sonic Youth. And I remember they came backstage. The guys in Sonic Youth were all awesome. They were great. But they came backstage. And I think Kim said backstage after a couple of shows, she goes, we would never really tell you guys that you needed to turn down. But,
maybe. Fuck that.
And we were like, that's good that you would never tell us to do that because
it's not happening.
You need to talk to Steve anyway. So he was just like,
cranking it.
Yeah, cranking it. And so I'm sure that was kind of I would have liked to have been in the audience and not known the band and seeing what that sounded like then,
Oh, man, I can't even imagine. That's crazy. Well, with Shot in 96, what did you make of kind of signing to a major label, and do you dig the production on that record, which by my ear I would say is cleaner?
Yeah, it's cleaner, but it's too, I don't particularly like the drums on that in retrospect because I think they were just too controlled and tamed down. And I think that there was a way of working that was accepted at that time that, well, you need to do this and you need to kind of make everything real cleaned up and you don't want any extra sounds. And, if I was doing it today, I record myself at home just, for my own pleasure and demo stuff. And like, I like all that extra noise and, rough edges. And I think that it's great because it's more almost like when you were talking about Black Sabbath's first record.
Absolutely.
And listening to those drums, those are some drums right there. And it sounds like you are right there, and it does not matter what else is going on, but you can hear everything. You don't have to try. It's just like right there. So that part I miss, but I don't think it was that way. And I preferred the way Steve did it, I think, as far as the drums go, because he had the room sound was brought in more. And it was a little trashier, and I think that worked good at the time.
Yeah,
I really like the newest record. That's what I think. It sounds where it's more like high fidelity, but it's not too clean, and it's not too overproduced. But it has to me, it has the sonic, it comes to a level of what's expected today.
Exactly,
because things move quite a bit, like where reverb is either in fashion or not.
Mm-hmm.
Dry drums, reverb drum, all this stuff kind of comes and goes, it cycles. And so I think I just wanted to get something for that sounded more up to date, but not too tweaked,
Absolutely. Post Shot, do you recall about when you ended up leaving the group?
Well, it was, we're doing some Australian shows, I think, in New Zealand, and we did the last one. I think I was with those guys was in Japan, but it was just really hard for me to my family was I had two very young kids, and my wife was like trying to handle that without me being there. And,
right.
The band wanted to do more, and I understood that too, but it was just too hard to reconcile both. It was like I had tried for so long, and it felt like two different worlds, and I had a foot in each, but I couldn't really give completely to one or the other. So I had to make a choice. I felt like at the time, and I chose my family, and it was the right choice for me, although it was really didn't want to give up the band. But so it was about 96, I guess, into 96, 97-ish, something like that.
Yeah, because I remember when Shot came out, by the time Jesus Lizard came through New Orleans, they had the guy that ended up playing with them after. So I remember thinking I was definitely going to those shows, but I wasn't seeing you. And I remember Shot coming out, so I was like, I think it must have been semi-close to the release, possibly the same year.
yeah, things were just getting very difficult, where I wasn't having much fun except for when we were playing,
Yeah.
and the touring stuff. It was just too hard. And I love being with those guys, and I love you know, playing out live, but just that particular time was very difficult.
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned the Jesus Lizard book earlier that I had y'all sign. There was a couple of stories in there that stuck in my mind. One was you were struck by lightning.
Yeah, yeah. I was struck by lightning when I was, I had a golden retriever as a pet when I was about, I guess, 13 or 14 years old. And it was a rainstorm, and I was living in Atlanta, and it was thundering and lightning, and I was going out to bring him some food, and I had an umbrella, and he was like in this fenced in area in our backyard, which was like a pretty heavily wooded area.
Uh-huh.
So it was like going through the woods, and I saw this flash of light, and then the next thing I knew, I was scrambling around on the ground, and like I guess it had popped to my umbrella, and it threw me like about 15 or 20 feet. I didn't break any bones or anything, but I was just like completely disoriented.
Yes, fair enough.
And so I blame that episode for the reason I am who I am today. So I have a good reason. Whatever happens, I just blame it on that one incident.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't think it'll happen again. At least the odds are in my favor.
No, I would say they're absolutely in your favor.
But I will say that was a pretty stupid thing to do, to go out with an umbrella in a lightning thunderstorm. Here, eat some food.
Right. Oh,
Whatever.
Oh my God. There was another moment where you mentioned a band that I really dug, and the drummer who I've spoken to, one of your bands was doing covers, and one of them was like a Captain Beyond song, maybe Raging River of Fear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's Bobby Caldwell on the drums. I've interviewed him. He is such a badass, man. He was killing around that time.
Man, that record is like one of my favorite records to listen to drumming wise, because
He's so good.
He's just everywhere, and everything he plays fits perfectly.
Yeah.
For that type of like slamming hard rock. It's just perfect. And like I wouldn't change a single thing he did.
Yeah.
I'm in awe about that. And I've heard some of the other stuff he's played, but I really think that record is just like one of the highlights of hard rock drumming, and like anybody that's a drummer can like listen to that and really get a lot out of it.
Absolutely.
Inspiration, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he had some Ian Pace vibes from what I could hear, but also had his own thing. And I mean, the band was just so interesting, and the way they wrote, and the instrumentation, everything about it. Yeah. I'm always singing high praises on his playing, man. So good.
Yeah, definitely.
There was another moment in there where you had mentioned digging like King Crimson, Yes, and Gentle Giant, and some of those kind of proto-prog bands, all of which I'm also a big fan. I thought it was cool that that's some of the stuff that you were getting into at that time.
Oh yeah, and like in high school, I remember going to parties, and we would listen to everything from Mahavishnu to like Yes, Gentle Giant, Crimson.
Yeah.
A lot of the jazz guys, like, Art Ensemble of Chicago, crazy stuff, like real out there for like being in high school. So we had a very unusual taste, I think, amongst all of us at the time, being like 17 or 18 years old and listening to that kind of stuff. But really did inform a lot of stuff. I mean, John Weathers, Gentle Giant, some great stuff. I was listening to that today, as a matter of fact, some of that stuff.
Nice. That's awesome.
Great stuff.
Yeah, man. And another funny thing with the book, there was a really funny David Yow quote in there that went something like, "I'd like the Jesus Lizard to be remembered as a band that worked really hard, never really got anywhere, but were important to a handful of people who didn't know much about anything."
Yeah. Well, if we can at least do that, then something has been done. But hopefully we'll make a little bit more of an impact than that. But it's all good, because at the end of the day, I think we're really just going to be a footnote, and that's fine. I mean, it depends what circle you run in, but I mean, we're really proud of the stuff we've done, I think, and we feel like we've worked really hard for whatever level of success we have. So we're really happy, I think, that we can still be doing this. That's the main thing.
Absolutely.
Really, really grateful,
Yeah. There's it's definitely a Jesus Lizard club. I feel like when I meet somebody and they say they're into the Jesus Lizard, I'm like, oh shit, I guess we're gonna be friends. This is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a common ground there, so that's good.
Yeah, peculiar tastes.
Yeah, and then you're probably curious, what else do you listen to,
Yeah.
And then, yeah. it goes
Exactly.
from there.
And so much so, I don't know if you can see it or the listeners won't be able to see, but I'm wearing a David Yow shirt.
Oh, nice.
It's just his goofy ass looking face, and I
Yeah.
wear it all the time, and not one person has been able to figure out who it is.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you're doing that for the team, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Those who know will know. It's just never
Will
seems
know.
to happen when I wear it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Again, back to his quote,
Yeah, exactly. Also, when y'all were putting out records, there wasn't an infold or an inlay or something with pictures of y'all, so I didn't really have an idea about what any of y'all looked like. I think the people that did pretty much were seeing y'all live.
Right.
And I think that was the image, was seeing y'all live, but the art and the lyrics and everything else was kind of devoid of a sort of band image, so to speak.
Right.
Which was cool. I mean, back in the mystical days of the pre-internet world, you just had to wonder, who the fuck are these weirdos?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we wonder that still.
Yeah. Oh, man. I was also thinking about crazy stage moves of David Yow, the crazy dick tricks of pushing his ding-a-ling and his scrotum and letting it pop out like a turtle. And I remember the first time I saw him do that, I said, I did that as a kid in the tub and laughed, but I could never imagine doing it in front of an audience.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between David and most of the rest of us, It's like
There's also a picture in the book of he's smoking a cigarette. Looks like he's had a few, and his legs are up in the air, and he appears to be lighting a fart.
yes, he did that too. Yeah.
There was no fire coming out, so I was like, okay, well, the picture didn't capture it, but did he ever do that live? Was he ever able to do that live?
Well, he I don't know that he did that so much on stage, but he would regularly do that, like in all sorts of public places, like restaurants and just like hotel lobbies, and like it just he he wasn't really like what you'd call a shy person, and I don't think he really cared much what people thought about him.
No, an incredible lack of caring.
Yeah, and he was always one to push people's buttons, and I think that's one of the things that I love about him, amongst many other things. But yeah, he would do that regularly for a while. Yeah.
Oh, man. There's another crazy story in that book where, because the whole funny thing about the band was, the three of y'all are up on stage, y'all are doing your thing, and then pretty much by the first song, he disappears.
Yeah.
And there's a story in there where that happened, but he didn't get up, and then they realized he had been knocked out from hitting the floor.
Yeah. There was a time, I think it was Zurich,
Yep.
Switzerland. Yeah, and he did this dive, and the crowd just parted, and it was a cement floor, and it was about 8 feet high stage, and that was it, and they just gingerly laid him back on the stage, and then we realized eventually that, well, he's not moving.
Oh, no.
So we stopped it, and that was the end of the show. He went to the hospital, and that was it.
Oh.
I don't think we played too many songs in that set either. It was pretty early on.
Yeah, it was like first song or two.
Yeah, it was about it. Yeah. So,
Sorry, show's over. We can do an instrumental set, but the vocalist is knocked out.
yeah, you should have caught him,
Yeah, it's your fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, that is funny. I can't imagine being in a band with him. He's a funny guy. I've met him out before, just like out drinking, and always just a goofy dude. I feel like he must have just had y'all laughing and doing just ridiculous shit all the time.
Yeah, well, he and I were considered the children of the band, and like I think the other two guys were a little more mature and like had I don't know. It just David and I got each other, and we sort of like pushed each other to stay in that realm of kid world. It was just a lot of fun to be around him, and still is. We all get along, but like it's just fun to be around each other, and yeah, again, that's why I'll come back to it again, but it's just so nice to be able to keep doing this instead of saying, oh yeah, we had great times back in the day, and I'm sure one of these days I'll say that when it's really done, but
Right.
I'm so glad it's not done yet, because I think we have some more music to make, and as long as we can keep doing this, I don't want to stop. It's great. it's weird in a way, because like when I was a kid, I would have never thought of a band being in their 60s playing music that was, had some weight and some aggression to it. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What kit are you playing these days? Are you Ludwig guy?
Well, I always used to play a '68 Ludwig kit, and I have it still. I love it. But right now I'm playing a early '70s Slingerland kit.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I recorded with, and recorded with the chrome over brass Slingerland snare, the deep snare.
Oh, nice.
It sounds really good. It's white marine pearl, and it's in beautiful shape. And I got it used, and it was new to me. But I had a Slingerland kit a long time ago when I was first starting to play drums. So it kind of brought me back to then. And they tune up great. It sounds good. But both those brands, any drums from that period of time, they're the old 3-ply with the rings. They're just great drums, and I love modern drums as well. But like I just have a personal affinity for these because a lot of the guys I was listening to at the time were playing these kind of drums, the old Deep Purple and Sabbath and all that stuff. So.
Absolutely. You had mentioned that chrome over brass Slingerland snare. Is that the Radio King, the Gene Krupa snare?
Yeah.
Is that what you used on Rack? You recorded with?
Yeah, I used that on Rack, and it's got like a trick throw off that's retrofitted.
Yeah.
And but it just sounds really good, and it's just got a kind of a, I don't know, kind of a strange dark honk to it that I like.
Oh, absolutely. I have one. I've got a 5x14. Sounds like you've got the 6.5x14.
Yeah, I've got one of each actually, and they're just great underrated snares, and like I like all sorts of metal snares.
Me too.
Aluminum, supers are great. Just anything. Brass ones, I dig them all. They just all have a little bit different thing, and depending how you tune them, but. Yeah, I'm definitely not, this is the one that's always good. I just kind of keep seeing what's working, I took a steel snare, a pearl steel out this last time, and it sounds awesome too.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I've got all metal snares as well, and the majority of which are brass. Brass just sounds good to my ears. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
In the break, when you when you were stepped away from the band, spending more time with your family, did you play much, or did you kind of take a break from drumming as well?
Well, it's hard to say because I was involved with the project with Preston Long, who was in Mule.
Okay.
And he had his own thing. I recorded 2 records with him, and we did a little bit of touring on that. And one of those tours was with Jeff Pincus from Butthole Surfers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was a lot of fun too. But not a lot during that break right then afterwards. I think I just kind of needed to focus on my own things I needed to work on personally.
Yeah.
And I had a few things that really needed addressing. So like I worked on that, got my family life stronger, and that was real important in order to do anything going forward. So it was a good time to kind of self-reflect. And then I gradually never stopped playing altogether, but I gradually got back to where I was really in the groove and really into the drums again and listened to a lot of music. And so got involved with a few other projects, but it was mostly just recording stuff, not like playing out live,
Yeah. And you've got in Chicago, you've got a drum room. It sounds and looks like.
Yeah, I've got a drum room that's in the basement here. That's a floated room. It's not touching the walls or anything, and it's kind of a purpose-built room. It sounds great for recording. And again, it's nothing to look at. It's just mostly drywall with a couple of blankets and carpeted floor. It's like 12 by 17. And I guess the ceiling's not much more than about 6.5 feet, but I can get a great sound in here. And I don't know. It serves me well. It's not soundproof, but it's not real loud if you go outside. I don't play late at night or anything.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, damn, again, man, it was great talking to you. Congrats on the new record. Again, I think it sounds great. And you're back in the saddle with your rock and roll buddies. It's kind of what a wild ride, huh?
That's it. Yeah, definitely. Especially with so much time, just like a space of time where like we weren't doing anything. And then getting a chance to do it again is just really amazing. It's great to be able to come back to it. And feels like, we just picked up where we left off in a lot of ways. So we just look a little older or a lot older, but we're all pretty, forgiving with each other as far as that goes. And, a few more Motrin or like some, Asper cream. And there you go.
You got it. That's it, man. Right on, Mac. Well, it was great hanging, man. I appreciate it, and best of luck going forward, man.
All right. Well, thanks for all the kind words, and I appreciate the interview.
Alrighty, that does it for this one. Thanks to you, the listener, for tuning in all these years and helping me get to 300 episodes. And of course, thanks to Mac for just being awesome. Love that new Jesus Lizard record. It kills. We'll catch you all on the next one. Crash, bang, boom, baby.